Right, what's happening, people? This is episode 13 of the Archive Podcast.
Jesus.
And did you know 13 is a lucky number at a lucky
bro.
number? Right, should I tone it down?
You're too close to the mic as well.
All right,
Jeez.
you tell me. What's happening, people? This is episode 13. What's happening, people? This is episode 13. What's happening, people? Right. What's happening, people? This is episode 13 of the Archive Podcast. And Dan, did you know 13 is considered an unlucky number because it's believed that Judas, who betrayed Jesus, was the 13th person to sit at that table? Would you believe it?
But it's not an unlucky number today, mind.
Because it's episode 13 of the Archive Podcast.
So,
right.
Chilled out sexy vibes.
How are you doing, Daniel? You all good?
Yeah, I'm good. Gyms are open back up. I had my first day, my first half of my day today in work.
How was it?
Splitting the day up with the podcast. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice being back.
Did you?
It was weird.
People?
Like, no. If anything, I was more excited to speak to people. I think I went up to everyone and was like, "Oh, it's good to be back, eh?"
What are those like?
Yeah.
You're the annoying PT now, bro. Going around pestering everyone. Do you want a spot? Do you want a spot? Do you want a spot?
Yeah.
That's Dan. If you see Dan in the gym, say you don't want a spot. He smells.
I smell delicious.
Yeah. How was the first client back?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was nice to get like the clients in person rather than just doing it on Zoom.
Yeah, cause I was going to say, cause I haven't had a client in the gym, so to speak, just yet. I've done some sessions and stuff, but how was it? Because I know you've been doing some Zoom PTs and the whole, online thing. How was it being in the gym rather than online now? Because I think everyone's adapted to like a new normal.
Yeah, I mean, like online, I did the online programming anyway, so like that aspect didn't change. So like people who I wouldn't necessarily have in the gym usually, that kind of never changed. That really, like the exercise selection changed a little bit depending on like the equipment because obviously they didn't have a gym. But like those Zoom PTs, like other PTs will know that like it's kind of hard to get a big scope on like how they're actually performing in that session because you don't really get. It's hard to judge intent and that kind of thing. It's hard to get a full grasp of the execution. Sometimes you may miss a few reps due to connection issues and stuff. It's just a suboptimal sort of way of PTing, and I can't really see it ever being like normal. If I'm honest with you, it's just a little bit rubbish.
I don't know though. I think because I've listened to some podcasts on it, and their perspective is that you might be able to get access to high quality coaches. So if your coach isn't in your town, for example, I know of a lot of online coaches now, you'll hire someone from across the globe. So having them look over your form, they're the ones that are doing your programming, especially for things like powerlifting, where I feel like there's a big technical element, weightlifting, not so much bodybuilding because, that's just, you pick this machine, it feels good for you, go through the reps, make sure you're doing it well, feeling it. But with powerlifting and weightlifting, you've got that technical element. So you can actually do what your coach wants rather than, sending a video, getting that delayed feedback and then trying to implement it. Because as you know, Dan, feedback is better received there and then. So do you think it will ever have a bigger part in
like you said, it gives
training?
like you said, it gives access to better sort of coaches. Like it sort of like widens the scope and your options when you're choosing a coach. But I still don't think much trumps that one-to-one, like being there and like, especially if you're fortunate to have a good coach in your area, nothing is going to trump that.
No.
Whereas I feel what it could potentially do is kind of like filter out some of the like lower skilled coaches and the rep count, the glorified rep counters, if you would say.
Yeah.
Basically, it'll just be radio. Like you perform an exercise, it'll just be radio silence. It'll just be like
2,
3. Yeah, and I think that, but also it's a pain in the ass when I think this problem, like I would say more for sort of like if you're working with a trainee that's relatively developed, where they are kind of like at a certain level of competency where they can perform sets to a decent standard on their own, where they could send you video feedback and you could have that sort of like back and forth sort of like um what's the word,
Conversation.
consultancy relationship, where they send over videos of exercises and sets and that kind of thing. But the whole Zoom PT realm is like, it's just a little bit awkward to get around, because sometimes the connection goes and you might miss a few reps where there could be potentially a few interventions there where you could queue. Sometimes you'd have to like get the individual to move the camera around so you can get a good angle, whereas like in that person you can kind of just walk around
Yeah.
and take a good enough position yourself, whereas like you kind of got to like instruct them, like, I want you there, I want to be able to see this, that and that.
Yeah, because you can kind of get your like coach's eye from wherever you want when you're in the gym, because you can just move yourself around. But that's one thing I noticed, and I like how you touched on it. So I've had a few clients on the Zoom, and the ones that were relatively trained and had been with me previously, I found it so much easier than people who were new. So I had
Yeah,
2 new clients sign up through Zoom, and that initial first feeling out, because the first
yeah,
session's just feeling out in it. So as most like strength coaches, it'll probably be a bit more of a movement assessment rather than a training session, and just finding out where you're competent, where your skills and abilities lie, and trying to teach someone who's never deadlifted before, never squatted before, to hit correct shapes is very difficult with Zoom. And I think that's where it's going to change in the gym as well, is now we're not allowed that hands-on feedback and putting people into positions. That's usually the best way you can get someone into position.
yeah. Like what I find is like working with like people who are new, external cueing typically works better. Whereas if and because of that reason, that we can't obviously be hands on, you can't really cue that way. External cueing is a little bit of a narrower option now, and it's rather more like internal cueing, where like verbal cues, that kind of thing. You can use external cues to an extent, but some of them are limited just because of that social distancing thing. And I feel like that will
I
slow down.
I don't know, because for those that don't know, cueing is something that a coach does for an athlete. So, for example, if you're doing a deadlift, you can get 2 types of cues, internal and external. Internal just means that you're cueing something located to a body part. So that could be something like, if you're doing a deadlift and you're kind of sitting your hips too low, the coach might say, bring your hips a little higher. That is an internal cue. External cueing then relocates outside the body. So that would be something like on a deadlift, rather than telling them to put their hips higher or whatever, it would be like, squeeze the bar and try and show off your badge. So that'll help puff your chest up and keep you in that position, rather than saying chest up. I know I mixed up the cueing with the whole hips lower thing, but hips lower or hips higher would be a internal cue. External would be like, try and bend the bar for me. So you're giving them an action that's not related to their body part. And external cueing works really well with beginners, I feel. And I don't know, I think this time is going to develop coaches quite a lot, because they always say, if you can talk someone how to do something, you can show them how to do it so much better. So if you upskill yourself to the point where you're being able to communicate effectively what you want them to do without even getting hands-on, I feel like that's going to upskill coaches massively in the whole element when it does come back to, showing them the positions, getting them into like hands-on. You're going to have another tool to your arsenal with your verbal communication then, that's going to upskill coaches quite a lot. That's my opinion on it. And with the whole not being able to put them into position thing, it is going to be a detriment to start off with, but then I feel like that's going to wean out the coaches that can't actually explain stuff, and I think this time has been difficult for PTs, hasn't it? Because you've seen many a gym has shut, many a PT has quit. I know a few gyms have struggled with retaining PTs during this time because of how challenging it has been. What's been your biggest struggle for you as a PT during this time? Obviously, disregarding the whole having a gym and all that. What's been your biggest thing in like getting
I
client
mean,
buy-in and stuff?
it is that whole client buy-in element where, you know, it's hard to relay a message like, you know, this doesn't really mean necessarily that you can't train, and you know, you don't have access to a gym, which is largely what our coaching is based around. People kind of look at that as if to say like, right, your PT, you're kind of like null and void now. Your job is relatively, you know, non-applicable to my life at the moment. Like, I'm paying you a fee. You know, I don't like to, you know, sort of like involve money into that. You know, obviously it's a part of the relationship, but you know, it's hard to rationalize the investment when you're not necessarily going to get the most out of it. Do you get me? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to kind of like get that buy-in when the mindset of the client is more like, I'll just touch back base when the gym's open.
Yeah.
That
And
initially was the hardest thing. And to be honest, I didn't do too bad at the start, but you know, keeping that sort of like interest with the home workouts, and like it varied per individual. Some would have more equipment than others. Some people would just get completely bored, you know, and there's only so much you can do to keep that sort of like exciting. And I feel like
yeah,
any
and
coach would struggle with that. And you've really got to, you really got to get like, I feel like you've got to have like a good client base who kind of like understand that. You know, I feel like if you set it up pre-lockdown, if you kind of knew, you probably could manage the process a little bit better. Like, these are the outlets that you can still have to keep strong and, you know, keep this thing. But I feel like the
yeah,
buy-in was the biggest issue for me.
yeah, for me,
People just lost interest.
totally. Like, it came at a shit time for me. Like, it probably didn't come at a good time for anyone, but it was when I was already looking to probably cut down on my PT hours because I had my uni stuff coming up. So it came in a good sense that I couldn't go out on the beers and on the lash while I had a dissertation to write.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had to invest so much time into my dissertation, I think you've got to get a coach buy-in during a time like this as well. And I kind of was like, oh, I didn't set the right platform for my clients to start off with. I was like, oh, you know, I thought it would be over a little bit quicker than what it was. When I said a little
Mm-hmm.
bit quicker, a lot quicker. And I was like, right, we'll just kind of roll with the punches and see what happens going forward. When in reality, I should have probably set up a better platform, a better education software for my clients, because I found out you can get a lot of shit done from home.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at how effective some home workouts were, especially for the females. I know I did a post on it on the Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but I got so much out of home training for the females just because they find using their body weight a lot harder than men. So things like press ups, press ups, inverted rows, pull ups, trying to get those body weight movements in paid massive dividends to then them getting results. It was people at the start of lockdown not being able to do one push-up, banging out sets of 20, upper body musculature come on massively. Their strength then when they come into barbell movements skyrocketed. So a lot of my female clients within 4 weeks in the gym were hitting PBs just because they'd been using their body weight so well. And that was one thing that really shocked me. I was like,
Yeah.
and it kind of opened my eyes because I was a bit of a barbell knobhead. You know, one of the ones that's like, yeah, live and breathe by the barbell. You know, if there's no squat, bench, or dead, you can.
Yeah, definitely adds more to your toolbox.
Yeah, and even when I've had like the opportunity to provide equipment with people, I've still been like, females, we're going to get good at press ups. We're going to get good at rowing our body weight and things before throwing a barbell on. We'll get a lot more out of it. And yeah, it's certainly upskilled me as a coach, I think, during this lockdown.
It's definitely done bits for, you know, reinforcing the basics, because there's so much out there now that like people, it's become so elaborate, like all these machines, these different types of programs, like, this FST7, this bloody, like all these different programs. Whereas like, lockdown was really kind of like nailed in that now that the basics aren't fucking broken. Stop looking for, some elaborate fancy, exercise or, regime when you're missing out on so much in the basics, which is where I feel like people go wrong when they start with training as well. It's like they throw themselves into the deep end with all this advanced shit and like all this fancy jargon, and they done squat, bench, deadlift,
Yeah,
overhead
and
press. They don't do all the basics. They don't build that sort of prerequisites of like function, quote unquote.
foundation really, innit?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and one thing that I've realized is a lot of people think they're well above their training status. So it usually goes beginner, intermediate, advanced. And people think that's such a quick journey. I'm probably still an intermediate, I'd say, in my stage of lifting. And I've been lifting, 10 years now? About that. How long have you been lifting?
Since I was 14, so maths.
Eight, bro.
About 8 years.
Yeah, so we're still probably on that intermediate spectrum, I'd say. Going into that advanced, but at the same time, beginners, you're a beginner for about 2 to 3 years. Like, you can milk those beginner gains so much more. And you see people coming in, right, I've been training a year now. What do I need to do? I've been training a year. I can't see results. I'm like, you just still need to be doing what you're doing. Like, and when you go back to the basics, have a look at your training, for example. So if you didn't know, Dan was using the playpen during lockdown. Go on. This is going to be the Dan Ev show at the minute, right? Roll them through some of the results that you've got and like lifts and numbers you've hit.
Well, basically, let me give you a bit of context, right? Back in like, what was it? I started working in Cardiff around about June 2018. I injured my shoulder. I tore my infraspinatus and labrum, and I had pretty bad patella tendinopathy. Made loads of excuses, didn't rehab it. Neglected it, fell out of love with training, just stuck into uni. So my detraining course was fucking massive. I shit you not. I have been weak as piss for the last year and a half, where, and now that I've been sort of like take my gym privileges, it's all about that. People forget that having a gym is a privilege. It's not a right. So people abuse that. People are like, oh, maybe I won't bother going today. Maybe I'll skip that. Maybe I won't do this. Like, that's such a like ungrateful sort of mindset, and especially when that gets taken away from you, you appreciate it a lot more. So that's what happened to me. I started like appreciating the fact that me not having that gym, it really reinforced that, like, you need to get back to the fucking gym. And I did. I started training at the playpen. Got myself, back to basics, fucking program, squat, bench, deadlift. Well, not some, like, I'm not a massive preacher of the necessity of bench anyway, but, I did it for,
Right. For those that have trained with me, everyone knows bench is life. If you haven't got a big bench, you're worthless in life, and you should just pursue getting a big bench over everything. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, anyway, so squat, bench, deadlift, row, heavy. And heavy relative to my capacity is what I went. And I probably I put 30 kilos on my deadlift.
Yeah.
30 kilos on my deadlift. Probably about 30, near enough 25 to 30 kilos on my squat. And a decent amount on my bench.
Yeah, Dan's probably looking at getting a 2-plate bench, 3-plate squat, 4-plate deadlift. So 100, 140, 180 pretty soon. He's smashing overhead press as well. Rows numbers have gone up. He's put on like a considerable amount of muscle. And that alone, along with my training. So before I tore my hamstring, cry me a river again, I was on track for probably a 600-pound squat, 600-pound deadlift, 400-pound bench. Still on track for the 400-pound bench. I think that'll fall pretty soon. But they would be massive numbers for me. Like, haven't been in the ballpark of those for quite a while, with rugby taking off and stuff. But like I said, back to basics for me. I squatted, I benched, I deadlifted heavy, I rowed, pressed. None of the fancy, let's jump on a hack squat, target the quads a little bit better. Oh, let's jump on a hip thrust machine. It was literally back to basics. And I feel like a lot of the time you can get so much from doing the basics. Are they an essential part of your programming? Not if you're a bodybuilder, things like that, but do they add so much value that people miss out on? Yeah, massively. And I think it's just kind of reinforced my beliefs a little bit that, they are the main compound movements for a reason. And yeah, I'm going back to the gym with that mindset now that, back to basics for a lot of people. You don't need this fancy stuff. Yeah, and do you know all about the taking for granted thing? One thing I took for granted that I never will again.
What?
My bloody coffee shops.
Oh, yeah. I've had a fucking tits full of Dolce Gusto Americano, bro. I just have. They are just shit. They are just shit.
Right. I was, proper excited. So I've basically evolved my coffee game. Started at instant coffee when I first got into the game. And then it moved on to hyphy mud. Have you ever had hyphy mud?
Mate, fucking get a grip.
Have you ever had it though?
Did you fucking wash that down with some ramen and tuna or whatever you fucking eat as well?
But right, if none of you know what hyphy mud is, Cali Muscle, just give him a YouTube, right? One of the biggest clowns in the industry. I think he's moved out to gaming now.
Mate, he's a fucking idiot. He's an absolute...
But he went to prison and he's massive. He is absolutely jacked. And,
natural.
14-year-old me was like, I want to be that guy. But his pre-workout used to be 2 tablespoons of instant coffee into a glass mixed with Coke. And he'd mix it
Coca-Cola.
up.
Coca-Cola.
So yeah, that was my second coffee thing. Then
you can't count that. You cannot count that as a coffee as part of your coffee game. Like, boy, mixing coffee with Coca-Cola. I have actually tried it, but with Pepsi. And honestly, I was like, oh, the fuck. My buddy Morgan, right, who I used to train with, shout out to the Morgan, he's probably listening. He used to take that before every workout.
Love it. Love the dedication, mate.
He used to smash it. And I remember I bought my first type of pre-workout, which was the Optimum Nutrition, pre. It wasn't the one with the gold lid. It was the one that they did before that, which was a decent pre-workout at the time. It was probably better than C4 at the time. I bought that, and oh my god, did I abuse that?
Yeah, as you
oh
do.
My god, the first time I took it, I took 4 scoops at 15 years of age.
The most caffeine, the most caffeine I've ever had was before the playpen became the playpen. It was the Fort, and I felt like I couldn't carry that name on because the Fort was a group of people there, and we'll get on to train atmosphere because that's something I want to touch on. But the pre-workout was Ripped Freak, 2 scoops of that mixed with a full can of Monster, mixed with an extra 300 milligram of caffeine, mixed with half a scoop of C4.
You're talking about a gram of caffeine there.
Yes, it was a gram. And I remember that was when it was Griff Whitson come down, and he's one of the most mental people I've ever met when it comes to training. But we were all pulling big deadlifts, and that's when I pulled my first 250. I think I was 17. And yeah, did I die for the next 3 weeks? I was like, but
yeah, I can imagine you felt like an absolute melted welly after that.
Yeah, not good. I sat down in a chair for a couple of days. But then in the coffee game, back to it, I bought filter coffee. If you ever watched Juji Mufu, kind of got on the filter coffee hype there, drinking gallons of that. Then moved to the old coffee pods, but like you said, they just don't it the same anymore. I was like, oh, come on, we'll have a coffee, lads. Come on, we'll have a coffee. And then now it's been like...
Chris Toombs actually enhanced my coffee game a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah. I remember he used to come into the lectures and he'd have a litre cafetiere full of coffee and he'd just drink that.
That's...
When we get him on again, we'll chat coffee. I'd like to get a bit more just chat general shit with him rather than just like,
Yeah.
because hound the S&C VBT stuff, because I bet he's fed up of talking about it. But
Yeah, because I've actually decided I've booked onto the seminar of old Chris Toombs. We're doing VBT seminar up in North Wales, I think. I've got to finalise the dates because we were supposed to be going on holidays, but for you people that know and seen my story, the holidays ain't happening now.
No.
And you can say, I told you so, but, man can dream. I was just looking, sitting, waiting, wishing on this holiday. Didn't happen, but on the bigger and better things.
Like work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But chatting pre-workout, what is the best pre-workout you've taken? Because mine has changed since we've last had this discussion. I want to know if yours has.
My friend, my favourite pre-workout, I'm not going to count Craze and Jack 3D in there because they are not my favourites because they are shite. They are awesome pre-workouts. They will literally rev you up so much and probably enhance you a little bit in the gym. However, they are just impossible to sort of like feel like that. There's a trade-off between recovery when you take them because like you just can't level your head after taking those. Your appetite is fucked after taking this, so you can't really get optimal post-workout nutrition and that kind of thing. But my favorite pre-workout was the most recent one I bought. Yes. I can't remember what it's called. What's it called?
Bring the Chaos, I think.
Bring the Chaos by was it by? I bought it. I can't even remember.
I know. I messaged them after I took it. I messaged them. What are they called? Chaos Crew.
Such a good pre-workout. Such a good pre-workout.
Absolutely.
I've tried
me socks off.
I've tried all the top dog pre-workouts as well, like MV Pre, Naughty Boy, all those, and that shits over them all.
Like, I took one scoop. Now I'm normally like double scoop, odd man, caffeine.
You can't double scoop that.
But I took one scoop.
Yeah.
And mixed it in with water because Dan educated me on how to take a pre-workout. It's still to the dome, but don't tell him. Yeah, so one scoop of that. I thought, oh, this is all right. Nothing really. Hour later, I've never had that laser cognitive focus from a pre-workout before. I've always just been like run through walls. And I had a very good mixture of
energy and focus.
Entering the matrix with some intensity.
It's like you're John Wick, but you're in the Matrix at the same time.
Oh, it was unreal. I even messaged them after. I was like, there.
What a pre-workout.
I had to sit down.
Did they message you back? Did they message you back?
So I said, I went, what the fuck have you put in there? I've been feeling wired for about 3 hours. Only the finest stimulants, bomb emoji. I was like, there. Okay.
No, but yeah, everything's disclosed on the label. It's a completely legal pre-workout, so it's not one of those dodgy banned ones. But it's just really well dosed.
Yeah,
good ingredient pre-workouts. I want to try Jordan Peters's pre-workout, the Trained by JP Prepare. I think it's called. I'm not sure what it's called, or it's called Stay. I know what it's called. That's like the ingredients in that are all raw ingredients, like proper good ingredients. Yeah, I'd be interested to try that. But yeah, that pre-workout at the moment is my favorite because Jesus, what a session I had. I PB'd on pretty much everything in that session.
Yeah, unreal stuff. Do you know, it shocked me. I was like, God, I didn't realize something could be this good.
Yeah.
And how much was it?
30 quid.
Bargain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But what is on the cards for your session today then?
I've got it's in my logbook.
Oh, God.
I know it's my squat day. It's my first squat.
You got loads of him.
My first squat back at the gym. I might even I might even jump on some machines today, like a hamstring curl or hack the leg press or something, just to know what it feels like.
Overload. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to touch on was training atmosphere.
Can't buy it.
You 100% can't. And that's one of the biggest things that I've taken through lockdown was if you've got a group of people that are all coming together to absolutely shift some tin, you are categorically going to have 100% better workout than if you train on your own, in my opinion.
I hate training on my own.
It's like, I know some people get into the groove because they're like, oh, you know, other people slow me down, I do my own thing, whatever. If you can align a group of people on a similar training regime, you are going to get mad results from that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
And you can't, like, what I find is sometimes people do just bitch out.
yeah.
And that's not me coming from, like, I think people who train on their own bitch out, because some people really don't. People will, but, you know, the thought of bitching out doesn't even enter your mind when you train with other people. It's like, you just have that overall feeling of good session every session you have. Like, Joe, when you go into a gym and you go, fuck, that was a good session. And then sometimes you go in and you go, Jesus, that was a shit session. That was really bad. It's going to put me in the mood for the rest of my day. I've not experienced that with training with a good atmosphere.
No, and like, I know when I've done sessions on my own, I'll just chuck a podcast on, or like, you know what I mean? And that's not
Just going
optimal
through the
training
motions.
environment. Like, yeah, and it is going through the motions. And I've had all my best sessions have been with a training crew. So all my biggest numbers have been when it's been planned with everyone around. So my first 1-ton challenge at the gym, they set the equipment up for me. They would hype me through it, chatting, talking to me, getting me through. Could have done that without them. Then the half marathon that I done, trained, smashed it out. When I was on 10K in, and I saw one of the boys was coming up to finish his running bit off, and just seeing him coming for a run, you're like, right, spurs you on, and you haven't got that opportunity to just shit out there, have you?
No, the thing is though, with that, like you said, I do think at the same time I think it's appropriate to kind of be level-headed because of that level of just arousal. If you don't know, but when I mean arousal, I don't mean it in the sense where you'll probably all think. I mean, sort of
I am.
Training
I get
arousal.
very aroused.
Training arousal is just sort of like, it's got sort of like how hyped up you are, how psyched up you are for a certain exercise. Like you'll have before like a game. Let's say if you're football from the American perspective, they'll hype each other up before the work. That changing room, that is the arousal. So it's like getting your mates to hype you up before a lift. That level of arousal, that is probably not an optimal thing to include in every training session. Obviously, you want to psych yourself up, get in the zone for that lift. However, you don't want to be like ripping things off the walls, headbutting walls, and wanting to headbutt the barbell every session just because the sort of systemic effects that you'll get from that, you'll probably get some sort of trade-off with.
But then that's where I feel like
wind down from that session.
That's why I feel like, though, if you've got a training group that align with that, so you're going to have your days where you're flipping the switch, and the majority of the time, everyone on that group is going to be flipping the switch at the same time. But when it comes to just doing the the grunt work, the stuff that's not pretty, not fancy, you've just got to get through. A lot of the time, the sessions are toned down. Is if you're referring to American football, are they like that in training?
No.
Some of them probably are, but yeah. Have you seen that video of the bloke that gets that hyped up? He starts headbutting people in the pre-game huddle.
Yeah.
Except he hasn't got a helmet on. Everyone's got helmets on, and he's "Boo!" headbutting everyone gets psyched up. There's just blood pissing down his face.
Oh, Jesus. But yeah,
I'm like,
I get you totally. But yeah, it's nice to have people with the sort of same aligned goals and people that can keep you level-headed as well. I know Joe, training with Joe, I would sometimes lose my head quite frequently with training. Like I get quite pissed off. I just get a little bit like sort of like, not so much where I'm not like objectively annoyed. If you look at me, I look pissed off. I like lose my head and I get a little bit like sort of do you know what, I can't be asked this today. Like you keep my head screwed on. I feel like me and some of the other training partners we've got did that for Joel as well, and around like this for everyone else. It's nice. It's good to just have like, because if you were training on your own, you wouldn't have that. You'd have to do all that yourself.
Yeah, because you have bad days with training, and like, yeah.
I would just say you'd have.
Not so long.
Yeah, go on.
I had one not so long ago, and were you there for it? Yeah, you were. Yeah.
that barbell had a hiding.
Yeah, so I turned full Kyle. I was like, I was there, and I thought, you know what would be good? So I just tweaked my back. Nothing major, but it was like everything had tightened up. I was like, I can still get a good lower body session in. Came in, Zercher squats, felt heavy, couldn't get into the pattern of them. I probably jumped up too heavy because I have a fucking ego when it comes to stuff like that. So managed to get those. Done some really good split squats then. I thought, right, need to target the posterior chain a little bit. What's really good? Hip thrust. So in Planet Fitness, we have a nice hip drive machine where you can just strap in, tighten. Fire exits is located here, 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 and in-flight menus in the card in front. So you strap yourself in, you just do your hip thrust. You don't have to worry about setting a barbell up.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, we're doing it down the gym, setting the barbell up on plates. I'm not the most mobile bloke with a big belly, so I was like trying to get stuck underneath things. Basically, it rolled out, caught my back. I was like, ah! And it was caught between the plate and the bench, and I couldn't move it. And then as I got it off one side, it kind of rolled the other, and I was like, ah!
Yeah.
But then, in my rage, I thought, what's nice and soft that I can punch? The bar pad.
The bar pad just goes, I'm a head out.
Yeah, it literally just rolls round, and I'm just like, metal bar. I'm like, I'm committed to this now.
Meanwhile, I'm stood there with a barbell on my back, just looking down like.
Yeah, I'd committed to it. I committed to the Kyle, and I was there just whapping the barbell, and I was like, nah. But yeah, we're all working order now. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
But like, if Dan were there, I would have probably not trained, but I still got a decent stimulus in. Was it optimal? No. But was it better than sitting in the house doing absolutely nothing, crying about it? Yeah. So just that's where the training environment comes in.
MEV, minimal effective volume.
Yeah, I know you've changed your ways on that a little bit, haven't you? With the whole.
I wouldn't say I've changed my ways. I've kind of been more. I've just kind of sort of like revisited it.
Yeah, what I would say is the sat nav's taking you on a little detour from Intensity-ville down to the old volume.
Yeah, because I used to find training like that relatively boring, but then I realized that I probably wasn't being 100% on with my reps in reserve. If people are not understanding what we're talking about the sort of being a little bit more sort of what do you call it? Conservative with your training intensity. Like if you follow some of the, if you're in the bodybuilding scene, like you follow like AJ Morris, trained by JP, Corin, all those kind of people who completely preach every set has to go to failure. Like, do not fucking miss those sets. Like those reps, like you finish at the bottom. And sometimes that just isn't optimal. I mean, 90% of the time I'd say that isn't optimal because you get that trade-off with, this. Like, I'm going to do a post on it soon. Basically, you've got your level of stimulus, but you've also got your accumulated fatigue. So whatever stimulus you get, whatever sort of training stimulus you get, you will accumulate fatigue, and that fatigue sort of accumulates and increases over time. If you train that level of intensity, that slope of training fatigue increases rapidly, and that just isn't sustainable in the long term. I would say, like a lot of people get beat up from that. Some people just do thrive from training like that. Obviously, Jordan is a perfect example. AJ Morris is a perfect example of that. And I feel like they manage it well. I feel like they know their bodies well. However, implementing that practically with, I feel like that MEV, MRV sort of strategy is, so that's the maximal recoverable volume and that minimal effective volume. And it's, you know, you're training sort of like in between that across like a 6-week period. I feel like that is more sustainable and more applicable, and it's easier to apply that to most people, because you don't get that trade-off with, you don't sort of accumulate that much fatigue as quickly, but you also get enough stimulus, and you know, still training relatively close to failure, but you're still getting sort of like an optimal stimulus to fatigue ratio, which is why I've sort of adopted that. And I feel like the best person, like obviously the person you should listen to on that is Dr. Mike Israel. And honestly,
he's the one that come up with the volume.
Yeah, he's the one that he's the coined any those volume landmarks. He's a fucking genius. Honestly, like just listen to him speak. He's the most fascinating bloke to listen to.
He's sarcastic as well, really sarcastic. I thrive off that.
The most enjoyable podcast I've watched with him on is his debate with Greg Doucette, bro. I feel like we should talk about Greg Doucette as well. Like,
yeah, on that. So just a little wrap up. So the reason why training intensity is such a big thing is because of the Henman size principle, isn't it? So your motor units get recruited in sequential order from smallest to largest. The closer you reach to fatigue. So if you're training to failure, you can be guaranteed that you're recruiting all your motor units. So you're going to get the most effective targeted muscle breakdown. But from that, you've got that trade-off. And I think I want to try and warn people away, especially during this time to start off with, about training to failure. Mm-hmm. So training to failure, the reason why it doesn't work for the majority of people is because you've got to manipulate and manage so many other variables. So things like your sleep, your stress, your nutrition, your recovery, your, just calming down after a session, they all need to be on point for you to be able to effectively recover and progress each session. And for the majority of people, especially coming back to the gym, everything opening back up, you've got poor nutrition choices leading in, which I've noticed with the majority of people now, they're slipping back into their old habits. The willpower to say no is going. You've got then the fact that everything's so new as a stimulus again. You training to failure is just going to absolutely ruin you. Mm-hmm. You've then got the problem of pubs opening back up. Alcohol's going to trash recovery massively. Sleep is going to go down from that. And I think all those things combined, if it's for the first 6 weeks, make sure you are following that, starting at the minimum effective dose and then slowly coming back up to that MRV where you're looking at those lower RIR numbers, so you're hitting closer to failure. But just as a thing, this is something that I want to try and get across. Less is more during this time. And I know we have both sides of the coin. And if you're one of the outliers that's got everything else nailed in, smash that training intensity. But for the majority of people that I know listen to this podcast, they're probably in the same boat where more general pop, train for a better lifestyle, obviously to build muscle, but just make sure you're being careful. I don't want you then jumping in at the deep end and feeling like I can't walk. And that's for PTs as well. Mm-hmm. PTs during this time, please do not feel the need to murder people. I know for a fact people are going to be coming from my strength club disappointed tomorrow morning because they feel like they should be able to do more. And that's what I want to get, even for the first 4 weeks. They should always feel like they can do more, because what happens is you throw too much at them, they come absolutely overtrained straight away, and they've got to take a deload within the first 2 weeks. It's just not optimal, and such a landslide for injuries. And I feel like with the rugby seasons and football seasons starting back up, we might see, I'm interested to see, to be honest. I'm not going to predict what we'll see, but I'm interested to see what will happen with soft tissue injury rates during this time, because the tissues haven't been prepped. So that's just my little safety rant.
Another consideration for PTs is a lot of people are in work. People, these people training to failure and stuff, this is their job. That is their job. Yeah. You then, as a PT, you've got people coming in for they might work corporate, they might have a demanding job physically, or, you're adding training stress in there. That recovery sort of requirement is going to tire them out. They're still going to be tired for their work. I know Joel was going, when he was sort of towards that sort of end of his cycle, where he sort of felt, you know, like he was on a little bit of a burnout. His work potentially was suffering, his concentration levels were suffering, his sleep was suffering, those kind of things. You've got to consider that when working with like general population as well, because like you don't want that to happen. You like your job is to keep them, you know, healthy, and their job is a priority. Like the gym is a secondary like hobby outlet for them. Like you don't want to be taken away from their job. They've got to go to work the next day and the day after and the day after.
Yeah. And that's why I put the caveat in. Probably 90% of people don't need to worry about training to failure. Just keep it nice and easy.
Yeah.
That's going to be that. But on to Greg Doucette, because shit you not, I still reckon...
going to get his website up now.
I reckon he's still going to typo on the website. Basically, Greg Doucette is quite a popular YouTuber at the minute that become popular for calling his natty or not. And I kind of like that series.
Let me give you a bit of context. Greg Doucette is a relatively successful powerlifter. World record holder, I believe, for the most reps of a certain something. I'm not that interested in his whole career, if I'm honest with you. IFBB pro bodybuilder, relatively successful in that. But as far as training knowledge, it's very little.
Like, he blew up on YouTube because of his whole natty or not thing. So he would just go, people would be like, do you think this guy's natty? And he'd be like, no. At the end of the day, no. He's definitely 1% chance that he's not on.
He's one of them people that's like,
chance on gear.
You need to be trained to failure. You need to be training hard. All you people are not training hard. I mean, like in the Dr. Mike Israel interview that he did, the debate with Mike Israel, he basically called all of his fans retards. And I'm sorry to use that word. That I quote he said, like, most of my fans are just, I don't know, retarded, or like he said something along that lines, and you know, basically said that they don't know how to train and that kind of thing, and you know, he preaches like people are not training on enough, this kind of thing. Just tell everyone what this guy charges for coaching.
Right. So to put this into perspective, how do you know how much Lane Norton charges? I think he's like 200 for like. Right, I'm not going to throw figures from anyone else. I'm not 100% sure. But to put this into perspective, this guy charges $12,000 for 12 weeks of coaching. That's $1,000 a month. No, it's not. That's dreadful math. That's $1,000 a week. That is $1,000 a week.
Yeah, for 4 months of coaching, he charges $12,000.
Oh, it's 4 months there. Yeah. Right, that's about $800 a week.
And if you watch this Mike Israel interview that he does with him, just look what you're getting for £12,000. Just look, that's what you're getting. He has no counter arguments. He has he can't rationalize anything. He can't justify. He can't give any sort of rationale behind any of his decisions. He gives arbitrary facts that are kind of not really validated in science. He's just like pretty much like the fact, if he didn't charge that much, I'd understand, because like, you know, there's a lot of coaches at his level. I'm sure he's like relatively knowledgeable about training and nutrition, etc.
Yeah, like we're not calling him an absolute idiot, to be fair.
He is qualified to do what he does, but however, in relation and in context, speaking contextual to how much he charges, it's a fucking joke how much he charges, bro. Like he's a fool. That's extortion.
Yeah, like to put that into perspective, that's probably 12 grand. You can buy a decent car. You could get. Like,
that's a fucking. That's a down payment on a mortgage.
Yeah, and what are you going to get from him that you're not going to get from the majority of people? Not a lot. That's why we're so irate about it. But yeah.
I'm actually not even angry. It's just funny. I laugh. Like, you gotta laugh at the people who actually buy it, because people do.
But yeah, that's what I mean. People do.
If you want to use coaching with him, it's $38,000. That's a wage. That's like the average wage in America.
But is he a really good businessman? Because how many followers have you got on YouTube? 500,000. Yeah.
160,000.
Have he? I thought he had like 500.
Oh, potentially. Oh, you might have more than that, yeah. He's just a
I'll have a look
fucking
now.
idiot.
But like the reason why he gets so many followers because he's so opinionated as well. He got 651,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
On YouTube, sorry.
He says that Jeff Nippard doesn't train hard enough and he trains like a pussy. His words. And Jeff Nippard.
Yeah.
If you know Jeff Nippard, he just does not. He also said, right, this is one of his arguments was, training with 2 reps in reserve is the perfect sort of like, you know, it's the sort of like sweet spot for training intensity. And he said that Jeff Nippard trains as a pussy, but Mike Israel said Jeff Nippard trains at 1 to 2 RIR for most of his sets. So you still saying Jeff Nippard trains like a pussy? He was like, yeah. He was like, but you just said 1 to 2 reps in reserve is to train the sweet spot. So, and it's just funny the way you just come around.
Because I haven't seen the actual thing, the podcast / interview. I'll give it a watch though, but I can imagine it's really I can imagine Mike Israel with his sarcastic comments and I bet he's just having fun. You know what I mean? You've got to have when someone's charging that much and you're just literally sat there ripping them. Because like he's part of Renaissance, isn't he? Periodization, Mike.
Yeah, he basically jumped onto Renaissance periodization when they first started because he was an actual practicing sports scientist for like basically an S&C practitioner for like college football and stuff like that. I do apologize, but and he was a professor, and he went full time with Renaissance. And,
because like Renaissance, to put it into perspective, they got an app that is basically your dieting coach and your training coach, or just diet. I think it does. So you sign on. They've created an artificial intelligence that comes in, tells you when you need to eat, what you need to eat, what time, and I think it's like something like $17 a month. So someone that's charging that for like his service, Mike, compared to someone that's charging $12,000 for nutritional and training services. Mike
could charge $12,000 for and he could I still feel like that's a massive overcharge. However, this guy he's got a PhD, and he's his wealth of knowledge is again it's quite ridiculous. But I remember one thing that Greg Doucette was like. This close on was like, yeah, well, I think I know more about nutrition than training anyway. And Mike just goes, oh yeah, I wouldn't know anything about nutrition. And he goes, and Greg just doesn't pick up on the arguments. He goes, oh no, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. It's like equality. It's so funny.
But that just sums him up, doesn't
it? And then Mike is just sat there like,
his camera angles is this.
Yeah. Oh. And he's just an orange bloke because he's been like on stage or whatever. Yeah, it's mega funny. Yeah.
But on that note, I think we're gonna have to wrap this one up because
that rounds off the podcast.
Dan has got his first class today. What is the class called?
It's called Power Hour, but it's 30 minutes.
Power 30 minutes. So
Power half an hour.
If you are in the Planet Fitness Rodiga area, sign on to Dan's class. I got mine tomorrow, Tuesday mornings, Thursday mornings, 6:15 a.m. Get on the GymSync app.
It's limited.
Always plug.
Limited to 6 people, mind.
But yeah, everyone, I hope you have an enjoyable week. And sorry about it just being us two. There was some I'm trying to think of the word.
Scheduling.
Basically.
Mishaps.
Yeah, there was some scheduling mishaps with Chanel being on the podcast, but we've reorganized. We're going to get that up and filmed this week, so it's out fresh for you to start next week. So, on that note, I've been joelaries.pt.
I've been Dan Evans PT. And by the way, I'm just going to plug my article.
Go on then.
I've got an article on Minotaur Fit. What's the handle? Is it
Minuscore.
Minotaur Fit. Is it .co.uk or .com?
Yeah, minotaurfit.co.uk.
Minotaurfitness.co.uk. And it's on velocity-based training. And Joel has an article on reps in reserve. Give him a read. Give us some feedback. Buy some equipment on Minotaur as well, because,
why not?
So,
on that note, thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed episode 13 of the Archive Podcast, and we will see you all very soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Peace and love.